and welcome to Grimm Reviews. I'm William Grimm, video gamer, writer, best of kept refrigerated, and today we're going to look at Devil May Motherfucking Cry. I love this series.
Woo woo!
And there was a lot to worry about for DMC, the reboot of the...
Woo woo!
Okay, the reboot of the storyline, but to get the full effect, you really
Assassin's Creed Unity hype train, motherfucker! Woo woo!
I'm going to do the DMC review.
No, but Assassin's Creed Unity.
Like, we talked about this.
But hype train!
Assassin's Creed Hype Train Review! Woo!
Woo! Assassin's Creed Unity is one of the two latest entries into the Assassin's Creed franchise. It promised co-op multiplayer, a customizable main character, larger crowds than we've ever seen before, and a return to the open-ended assassination missions that we haven't seen since the first installment. In certain ways, Unity delivered. There are crowds that are so big it actually caught me off guard. During the first assassination mission, I just sat and watched the crowd for a minute. The free running has also been revamped, allowing for what is called free running down. This is a quicker method than in previous Assassin's Creed games, which was either hinged on finding a hay bale or mashing the drop and grab buttons repeatedly to get to the ground. Unity doesn't come without more than its fair share of problems, however. While trying to complete a mission and just leaving a building through a window, I fell through the earth and saw a side of Paris I'm sure the developers hadn't anticipated. There are random drops in frame rate, usually when trying to free run in or around large crowds. Worse than that, every once in a while the game seems like it's simply too much for my PS4 to handle, which caused stuttering, and required me to close the Assassin's Creed Unity application and start it up again. Have you ever had to play a timing-based minigame with stuttering? 'Cause I have, and it sucks.
Several times during my playthrough, I'd managed to get Arno stuck from the knees up in the earth. It seemed to be a problem while trying to take off before the map had fully loaded, which I suppose in knowing information you could argue it's partially my fault, but it's a simple fix. Just don't let me move Arno until the damn map is loaded. Even very occasionally the game just froze, which again would require you to close the game's application, load it up again.
The multiplayer that the development team had promised would be seamless is simply absent from the game. Once I was queued for multiplayer and I actually had the patience to let the timer run up to 30 minutes before finally giving up on this attempt. There are many other attempts that didn't amount to anything. Oh, and for some reason the shortcut of holding the map button and pressing circle on my game doesn't work, so for me to exit the multiplayer queue, I have to either find guards and die, or reset the ACU application entirely.
Is this just a trend now in gaming that we have to deal with? Putting a game out with missing components that are mostly advertised? It's becoming an issue that we should not have to deal with. One of the biggest problems is that the multiplayer has different degrees of difficulty, unlocking different costume pieces for Arno, for some of the lowest tier to some of the highest tier. But I've already finished the game. When it eventually does start to become playable, I'm going to be incredibly too powerful for the easier missions, and the gear I unlock for playing them is going to be useless, seeing as I already have started using Master and even some legendary pieces of armor.
I would really like to play multiplayer, but the networking issues are keeping that part of the game away from me. Maybe it's because instead of focusing on multiplayer, the developers have the game connecting to two other parts of the game through the network. There's the companion app, which you need to unlock certain chests and districts, and then there's initiates, which you have to do the same thing. And right now, Initiate simply doesn't work. It doesn't have any of my progress from the previous games. And then the companion app, if you don't have Windows 8 or a smartphone, you can't use it either, leaving lots of chests on your map that you can't unlock. Although literally moments after writing this, I was able to get in my first multiplayer match, and it's very, very satisfying having 4 assassins doing something that one assassin simply couldn't do on his own.
I've been trying to use the Initiate system since the release of Black Flag. At first it was promising. It clearly had a lot of potential to move forward on. But let me give a recap for those who are unfamiliar with Initiate's history. When you attempted to use Initiates in Black Flag, for the most part, it worked. Having not only completed storyline, but 100% completing most of the Assassin's Creed games, I got most of the upgrades and unlockable content I could during those days. Then the issues began. Logging into the website sometimes, you would just learn that the progress was gone. They kept promising on the forums that their problems would be fixed and that it was just a matter of time. Kept saying that you wouldn't lose your progress in Initiates and that they just had to be patient. They even sold action figures with codes that you could put into Initiate's website to unlock digital content for the game. And perhaps for a short time those codes worked, but now they don't. And you just get Uplay points instead of the things you were promised from getting them. But as time went on, the issues become more plentiful and eventually they shut the whole thing down. And of course when Unity released, Initiates made its return. Only for it to still not work. Frustrating. Incredibly frustrating.
The decision to remove competitive multiplayer is absurd to me. It was a large part of previous Assassin's Creed games, and I loved it. The fact that they just removed half of their game seems that they would have been able to create a game that was more polished upon release date, except we still have all these issues plaguing Unity.
The competitive multiplayer was always one of my favorite parts of the game. In the beginning it was simple, but clearly the thinking man's game. Before the addition of certain abilities, when you played it was genuinely difficult to pick a good assassin out of the crowd. And where maybe it got a little stale over time, it never stopped being fun. It's a sad day for us all to learn that it would not make its return.
Enough about the problems with Unity though, let's take some time to focus on the good thing. The gameplay, while being similar to previous Assassin's Creed games, is fun. It just is. It's one of the 2 reasons I look forward to every new Assassin's Creed game. The changes to combat actually help you focus on stealth. Gone are the days of being surrounded by 5 or more guards and just deciding to kill them all. Instead now, you actually have to plan your fights and take them on accordingly. With this in mind, the stealth portions of the game feel like there's more on the line. Sure, you can drop smoke and return later, but those guards are still going to be there that you have to deal with. And this subtle change changes the gameplay enough for me for it to feel fresh. Armor and weapon customization is more detailed this time around, with different sets of armor across different quality levels. Each has their own distinct look, with the stealth set making you look as much like a commoner as possible, and the health armor makes you look like a knight in chainmail armor. I'm using a mix of different pieces, and with the color palettes available, it's easy to find a combination of stats and looks in a color that I like. Along with the armor, there are skills as well. While it may seem silly that Arno has to learn how to throw money on the ground, he is a freshly graduated assassin. Well, that one is still silly, but the rest make perfect sense. You gain sync points through completing main storyline missions or multiplayer missions, and use these to upgrade Arno in one of 4 areas: stealth, health, ranged, and melee.
This allows for much more in-depth choice in how you decide to play the game. Even between the 2 of us, our playstyles differ incredibly. Steven tends to stick to the shadows as much as he possibly can, avoiding combat and ducking to run when things get too heated. His combination of armor, weapons, and skills play perfectly to this. I tend to see my character as more of a swordsman in the smoke than an assassin.
Unity has also revamped the enemy AI. Instead of like in Assassin's Creed 3 and 4 where the guards would go to where they think you went, in a Unity, they try to investigate the area where they last saw Arno. You as the player know this because of a ghostly outline of Arno left where you just were. Players can use this to their advantage to draw a guard away from a hiding spot or to a cover spot to assassinate them. The Refill All button has also been added to shops. This tiny addition makes traversing the shops menu for all your consumables incredibly easy. Now instead of going to every consumable and buying those, you just press one button in the shop menu and then you're gone. The only way they could have made this easier is if you press square as you're running by the shopkeep. There has also been some public outcry about the game that we feel is unwarranted. Sure, when you start the game, the map is undeniably cluttered. This is true. It may feel overwhelming at first. There are a few different ways to get around this. You can change how you view your map with the shoulder buttons, or L1 and R1 on a PlayStation controller. You can filter by points of interest, missions, or selective. The selective one is really nice because as you zoom in, more things pop up on the map. Also, complaining about having more stuff to do? Really?
I'd like to expand on Steven's point by saying this. Fuck you guys. Well, look at all these things I get to do. My genuine first reaction to noticing all the markers on the map was one of excitement. Holy shit, there's so much to be done. This is not padding, this is not inflating the game experience with superficial nonsense. Maybe you don't like collecting every last little piece of stuff on the map. Okay, so don't. It's optional. It always has been. Assassin's Creed has always had a bunch of little things to do and collect. Maybe the map feels a little too crowded, but making this into a big deal is just so nitpicky. I like the Paris stories, I like the murder mysteries, I like collecting the cockades, and I'm certainly not the only one who does.
And let's talk about microtransactions for a minute. Ubisoft decided to go the way of microtransactions in this game. And in a day and age where I have to sync my Google Wallet to every app I download, I have my credit card on file with Xbox Live, PlayStation Network, and Steam, and countless other services, who can blame them? From a business standpoint, it makes perfect sense. Many people have complained that they've introduced a pay-to-win system, except for the part where this is a single-player game. Also, the only thing microtransactions get you are things you can get through normal gameplay anyway. It took me about an hour playing through the side content after I completed a game to save up enough to get my legendary weapon. That's not bad at all. They designed it in such a way that you have to be highly impatient or perfectly fine with spending money in order to use the microtransaction system they have in place, which in my opinion is one of the best ways to implement a microtransaction system.
Spoiler warning ahead, guys. We're going to talk about the end of the game storyline and some of the in-game storyline for the other Assassin's Creed games, so if you don't want it ruined, just skip ahead to this point in the video. Seriously.
The modern day storyline is a big part of why I got into the Assassin's Creed franchise. I started with 2, and then later on went back to play Assassin's Creed 1 to get the bits and pieces of the game that I missed. In 1, you learn about the whole Assassins versus Templars things, 2 secret societies that have been fighting a war for years. You learn that they need Desmond because his bloodline is important. You learn that Lucy, an assassin hiding within the ranks of Abstergo, a Templar organization, is helping you out. You know that you're searching for an Apple of Eden and that Abstergo plans to use it for some diabolical reason. At the end of 1, you find all sorts of things in your cell in Eagle Vision that make you excited for the next game. In 2, Brotherhood and Revelations, the stakes are raised. At the end of 2, one of those who came before speaks directly to Desmond through Ezio, leaving Ezio confused. At the end of Brotherhood, we learn that Lucy is actually a Templar hiding out in the Assassins, and Juno forces you to kill her. In Assassin's Creed Revelations, we learn that the whole world is in danger. The Assassins and Templars are too caught up in their secret society to fight to do anything about it, and only Desmond has the knowledge needed to stop it. We know that there have been many attempts to save the world, but none of them worked, but that those who came before finally found a solution, but it was too late to do anything about it, and the remaining members of those who came before died out, leaving only the humans on the planet. And in one of the DLCs, you find the location of the temple. In Assassin's Creed 3, you go to that temple. You find out that it's locked, and you realize that you have to go relive one of Desmond's ancestors' lives again. This is known through the bleeding effect, which happens to Desmond because he spends so much damn time in the Animus that he starts seeing ancestors' memories even when he's not in it. So he realizes that he needs to go look at Connor's life to find out where he hid the key. So you relive Connor's life, find out that he's only an assassin because those who came before decided he needed to be one. So while he's an assassin, he finds the key and then he hides it. You find it as Desmond, find the key, get access to the temple, get into the temple, have a decision to face. You either have to save the whole planet and kill Desmond and release Juno into the wild, one of those who came before, probably bad news, or you can leave the temple sealed, have most of humanity die, and have Desmond come out as kind of like a Jesus-type figure to the small population there. Obviously, Desmond being the hero decides to die, release Juno, save most of the population, and that's where 3 ends off. In Assassin's Creed 4, we learn that sages exist. They're people who are reincarnated over and over again and gain access to their previous lives. That's it. They exist. All a modern-day storyline. In Assassin's Creed Unity, the whole idea of the gameplay of reliving Arno's memories is to find a sage because Abstergo realized that a sage's DNA has a lot more of precursor DNA in it. So we know that they're trying to genome a precursor DNA, and in fact they spell that out for you in the one bit of modern-day story that matters. The whole Inter-Abstergo video? Yeah, the Phoenix Project? They spell that out for you there. That's all the modern-day story you get.
Actually, I lied there. There is more modern-day story if you do the Helix missions, but this still breaks a big rule of storytelling. Show, don't tell. Doing the Helix missions will unlock Assassin Intel, which will give you more insight into Juno and what she's doing right now, but that's still about it.
I have far less of an attachment to the modern storylines peppered into the games. I could take them or leave them. However, I do agree that if we're going to continue to use them as a catalyst for the games, put some damn story in them. But before we get into that opinion, Arno's story. Ready? Go. Arno's dad dies. Arno's adopted by the De La Serres, develops a romantic history with a daughter, Elise. Mr. De La Serre dies. Blame is placed on Arno for the murder, goes to prison, meets with Bellic, escapes prison, becomes an assassin, uses the assassins for revenge/redemption, starts piecing together exactly what happened the night of the murder, who's responsible, and exactly how it's all connected. Turns out De La Serre was a Templar, which is normally a big issue, but during this storyline, the Assassins and Templars are in a weird kind of ceasefire thing. Turns out Elise is a Templar. She needs your help. Help comes with a little distrust, and the Grandmaster of the Assassins is murdered. Looks an awful lot like a Templar got to him. Elise is an obvious suspect, but it was Bellic.
You poisoned Mirabeau! He poisoned us!
Arno murders Bellic, and suddenly has less friends in the Brotherhood. Elise and Arno get an attempt to take out the man behind the murder, but Arno decides to save Elise's life instead of taking the kill. Elise gets mad about it. Women, right? Through his constant use of the Brotherhood to try to achieve his own vendetta and blatant disregard of the rules and vague disrespect, he's forced out of the Brotherhood, goes into a depression. Wham! All is lost, including the watch his father gave him as a child. Goes to the past haunt him in a search for it. Elise shows up with it. How did she get it? No time to explain, says Unity. We got some murdering to do. More people fall to the hands of Arno and Elise, both shunned by their respective orders, find the final bad guy, fight him with a stupid in-game mechanic, and not any of the damn skills you developed during playing the game. Elise dies, bad guy dies, end of story. Mostly. Like Steven mentioned earlier, the modern day story ties into this and that the final boss is the sage you're looking for, which during the end of the game you find out that Arno goes back for the skeleton of the sage and places it in the underground catacombs of France, thus making it entirely unusable to the Templars. Not to mention fucking stupid as hell to find. So what does the modern day story result in for Unity? Fucking nothing. You're looking for a sage dies, and is completely unusable. No ties to anything else, no threads to build on, no story to continue. It all wraps up in the worst way possible. Even in Arno's storyline. Let's say this is the only game we get to play as Arno, so let's just assume this is it. The love of his life is dead, he's no longer an assassin, and as far as we know, he doesn't really have any other prospects. He was pretty much a housemaid for the De La Serres before becoming an assassin, so what is he doing with his life now? Working in revolutionary France McDonald's? If Elise would have made it, then at least we would have had something. Why did she have to die? Because emotions? You know what's an emotion, Ubisoft? Happiness. The game is filled with bad stuff that makes you feel bad. It's revolutionary France. You would have to be hard-pressed to find a more depressing point in history. Why can't we be left with something that makes us feel good? Kenway had a touching into his game, and it really felt like this one could have used a light at the end of the tunnel.
If you skipped the spoilers, welcome back. If not, Thanks for watching. We're finally going to tell you whether we think you should get this game or not. All in all, Unity has its problems. The multiplayer refused to work until 6 days after its release. It has its bugs, but were promised fixes. But it does make us feel like an assassin working our way up through the ranks, and the gameplay and storyline are fun and interesting enough to keep us playing this game for the coming weeks.
If you're a fan of the Assassin's Creed games, pick this one up for sure. It's more Assassin's Creed, but it changes enough to keep it fresh. If you're not a fan of the series, maybe leave it alone for now until everything's fixed, or at least play Black Flag.
This has been our review for Assassin's Creed Unity. If you liked this review and want more of them in the future, leave a like or a comment below so we know to make more of these videos. Bye!
Okay, bye!